Before we begin today's tournament, we're going to tell you guys a little bit about spool heads and some of the track pieces that they have made that we will be using in this tournament. Spool Heads has a wonderful website where you can check out a wide variety of different track pieces that you can use to make your own tournaments right in the comfort of your very own home. They have a wide variety of options as mentioned, including pieces like this, which you will see at least a couple times in the tournament. But they have crossovers, straightaways, twists and turns, you name it, they've got it. And as cliche as it may sound, the possibilities are quite endless. So if you want to get your own track pieces, make your own tournaments, etc., feel free to check out Spool Heads. They have a website and a Facebook page. But for now, welcome to day 1 of the 3rd custom mail-in tournament. Here is the first group that we've got. Who will start us off? AJ Buster, J-Bo, Johnny B, and AutoZone. And the tournament has begun. Staying relatively close together, but it looks like Johnny B was slightly in the lead for just a moment, but AutoZone quickly overtakes that lead. And now it looks like J-Bo is coming up close behind him. And don't worry, everyone will have a chance in each lane of the track. And AutoZone does have that lead currently. J-Bo is looking to close that gap. So far is actually doing it, but will he be able to close it enough? As they get into the last part of the track, AutoZone held on to that lead and finishes with a 17.24. That is the starting time to beat. A great start for AutoZone. Let's see if he can stay that way. But take a look at this. The way the track is designed, sometimes it'll be a little difficult to tell how close some of these racers are to each other until they get to that last incline before the final sprint. That ought to keep things very interesting until the very end, at least ideally. But now for race number 2, AutoZone has a slight bigger lead going out of the gate this time. J-Bo and Johnny B are relatively close together, but now they're trying to catch up to Auto. AJ Buster has a little bit of ground to make up right now. AutoZone has a clear-cut lead this time around. It's not as simple to catch up this time. And now going down the incline, down the final stretch, and they cross the finish line first yet again. Finishing now with a 17.53. And I believe everybody finished in the same position as they did in the first race. Let's double check that. Yes, they did. We've already got some consistency going. And now AutoZone is only one win away from automatically progressing to today's finals. And remember, as we get through each finals, the top 2 will progress to the next stage of the tournament itself. But for race number 3 now, AutoZone is actually being followed close behind by J-Bo, but that gap is actually widening going around that turn, and AutoZone would like to keep it that way, but J-Bo is not making it easy for them. And now they get into the final lane merger down the incline, and AutoZone takes a 3rd consecutive win, finishing even faster with a 17.36. Meanwhile, AJ Buster managed to finish in front of Johnny B this time. At this point, it may be difficult to move on for either of those two, but at least AJ Buster did not finish in last every time. In fact, in some cases, in previous tournaments, we had racers who never finished at all, so they're already doing better than some of the racers we've seen in recent history. But now for the 4th race, it looked like Auto was actually falling behind for just a moment, but something gave them a second wind and they gained a sudden burst of speed somehow, and now they have a decent-sized lead over everybody. Auto is looking to get the first sweep of the tournament in the very first group of the same tournament. This is not something you often see in these custom mail-ins, but it looks like Auto is going to be able to pull it off, and he does. Auto already has a sweep and is now in contention to be an undefeated racer. Meanwhile, AJ Buster and Johnny B went out with a DNF each. DNFs in general are painful, but it's especially so if it's the last race you appear in for the tournament. But it will be AutoZone and J-Bo moving on. Let's see who will join them in group number 2. And we have Abby Normal, NZ Racing, Giorgio, and Puff. Puff has become a very recognizable name in this tournament, and they've certainly earned it. Let's see how well they do in this tournament. They do start off with the lead. Giorgio was pretty much right next to them, and now NZ Racing is not making it easy for them either. It is a three-way race for the finish, with Puff currently holding on to the lead, but here comes Giorgio. They get into the lane merger, they end up right next to each other. Giorgio actually spins Puff around, and that results in Puff finishing in third. Meanwhile, Abby Normal comes up behind in fourth. And I believe that is the new fastest time we have so far. You will often see the speed record being broken several times near the beginning of the tournament while everyone is getting accustomed to the track. But it becomes much less common later on once everyone gets settled. But now for race number 2, Abby Normal is trailing behind a little bit. The other three are staying in well contention with each other. I believe Giorgio has a slight lead, but again, sometimes these angles can be deceiving. And now Puff is playing catch up with NZ not too far behind them. They're actually spaced relatively evenly right now, but Giorgio has an excellent launch down that hill, crossing the finish line without any hassle, finishing this time with a 15.63. And I believe that is 2 consecutive victories for Giorgio. One more, and they will take spot number 3 in today's videos that will move on to the grand finals. And we have 1 race left. Actually, no, we have 2. Puff starts off with the lead, but Giorgio is slowly overtaking them. And now Giorgio, out of nowhere, has a decent-sized lead, except here comes Puff now, looking to close that gap, and NZ is doing the same. Giorgio is a fierce competitor, and they are not making it easy for Puff and NZ. Puff is trying anything they can to close that gap, they just cannot do it. And Giorgio takes a 3rd win. They are automatically progressing to the next stage of this tournament, at least in the finals today. I gotta be careful with my wording, because there's the finals in each video, then there's the grand finals, then the ultimate finals. But now we have 1 race left, and Giorgio is already taking spot number 1 out of this group. Spot number 2 is likely to be either Puff or NZ, and with the way Puff finished in 2nd this time around, it definitely helps them a little bit. And now they actually have a good lead for the moment, but here comes Giorgio looking to close that gap immediately, and it looks like they're doing that for the most part, but it looks like they will not catch up to Puff, and Giorgio will not get a sweep. But all 4 racers finished all 4 times, and it looks like it will probably be Puff moving on alongside Giorgio. In fact, looking at those points, I'm pretty sure. Yes, Puff managed to sneak his way in to today's finals alongside Giorgio. And within this group now, only one of them, that being AutoZone, is the only one with a sweep right now. And they would ideally love to stay undefeated, but based on the speed of some of these vehicles, that could prove to be difficult. Now these 4 are staying a little bit closer together overall, but Puff and Giorgio continue their rivalry as they stay close together as they get into that lane merger. They divide up again, and who got a better result out of that turn? It looks like Giorgio got a slight edge over Puff. And they are heading towards the finish, and they both bump off the walls. Puff tried to spin Giorgio out of the way, but I don't think it was enough. No, it was not. Giorgio managed to grab that first win still. And that also means we will not have an undefeated racer out of today's video. But we did manage to get a sweep in the very first group. That is still very impressive. As we start the 2nd race, Giorgio gains an early lead. But sometimes it's not always easy to hold on to it. And Puff is now sharing the same split lane as them, but is slowly actually falling behind there a little bit. Giorgio, meanwhile, keeps getting faster and faster, it looks like. And now going into the final sprint, heading towards the finish line, a beautiful execution going down that hill, barely touching the walls at all, and they grab another win. Giorgio was likely motivated by the fact that they were denied a sweep, so now they're looking to try it again here. And whoever finishes in the top 2 in this group will move on to the grand finals. And so far, it's looking pretty good for Giorgio and Puff. Otto and Jabo have some work to do. Otto is actually staying not too far behind Puff there, but it doesn't seem like they are able to maintain that speed for very long before Puff pulls away. But right now, the one pulling away is Giorgio, as they have a much bigger lead than they did before. No contention whatsoever. And look how good they control themselves as they go into the straightaway. That allows them to grab a third win, while Puff finishes in second. And now we have one race left. It is going to be very difficult for Puff not to move on at this point. It's not impossible, but it is a little bit harder. It looks like, yeah, Giorgio is automatically moving on. Let's see who will join him. The fourth race begins. Giorgio does have that lead, trying to get the sweep this time around, as they were denied that in the previous group. But here comes Puff and even Otto now. They do need a good burst of speed, otherwise it is very hard to catch up to Giorgio once they have that lead. And they managed to get the sweep, I think. Puff made a valiant effort near the very end. And if they'd done it just a second sooner, they might have been able to pull it off. But nope, we have another sweep this time, now by Giorgio. And it looks like it'll be Giorgio and Puff progressing to the grand finals after today's video. 2 of the slots are now filled and many more to go. Thank you all so much. 2 of our third custom mail-in tournament. Our first group contains Lone Wolf, Leo, Essakan, and Arlo. Arlo is definitely a familiar racer, as are some of the other racers. Let's see how each of them perform. As we start the race, the one that gets the edge currently is Arlo, while Lone Wolf is the one that starts falling behind a little bit. But Essakan is having none of Arlo's lead as they look to pass them around that turn, and they do so. And now it is Arlo trying to catch back up. Meanwhile, Leo is trying to make something happen, but they're a little bit far behind at this point. Now Essakan going into the final turn, heading into the straightaway, does currently have the lead. Arlo's trying to catch up, but he spins out. Then Essakan spins out and blocks Arlo from passing him. So Essakan will get the first win. An absolute nail-biter, because Arlo was coming up fast, but Essakan denied that victory from them. Meanwhile, Leo finishes in third and Lone Wolf in fourth. Let's see if they can do any better in race number 2. Currently, it was Leo for a second who had the edge, but he slows down a little bit, allowing Essakan and Arlo to pass him again. Now they are on opposite sides of the track as they approach another merger of sorts, and it is Arlo who currently has the lead. Can they hold on to it, though? Because so far, they've been kind of going back and forth with Essakan, and it looks like they're relatively even right now. But as we get into the straightaway, Essakan is looking to come up behind him, and he passes Arlo for another victory. And that, I believe, is our new fastest time of 15.35. Up until this point, it was held by Giorgio, who I believe had a time of 15.63. But now the speed record is 15.35, held by Essakan. 2 races left. Essakan just needs another victory. And as we begin race 3, it is Arlo who gets a slight lead, about a half car's length ahead of Essa. But now they share the lanes, in a sense anyway. But Essakan now has that lead again. But going around that turn, Arlo made him neck and neck. But they had a slight wider turn at the start, and now it looks like Arlo is actually able to pass Essakan. He's trying to deny Essakan a sweep. It looks like he'll do it. Yes, he will. Not quite the fastest time, but he has denied Esakan a sweep and a chance of staying undefeated. Currently, we've had 2 people who have successfully gotten sweeps. That being Giorgio from day 1, as well as AutoZone. No one has been undefeated yet, but at least a couple people have already gotten sweeps. And now 1 race left with this group. It's looking pretty good for Esakan and Arlo, as they have always finished in 1st and 2nd respectively. But now look at this, Leo is actually keeping up with them this time around. He is trailing a little bit as Esakan starts to pull away, but they are a bit closer than they were before. But now Esakan and Arlo are yet again neck and neck. And as they go into the final turn, Esakan still has that lead. And it looks like while they didn't get a sweep, they did get 3 wins. And they are moving on, and it looks like Arlo will be joining them. Meanwhile, Leo and Lone Wolf finished in 3rd and 4th, respectively. And look at these incredible times, by the way. Didn't necessarily break the speed record multiple times, but now that they have the speed record and they're almost staying consistent with it, they are a sight to behold. But now we have the first 2 for today's finals, and 2 more out of this group will be there as well. Rank Hank, Little Fokker, Bolo Brown, and Shababy. Let's see if anybody gets the edge at the start of the race. And it looks like that will be going to Bolo Brown, but Little Fokker is not too far behind, as well as Shababy not too far behind Little Fokker. Rank Hank, however, is struggling a little bit, but Bolo Brown is taking off, and they do have a decent-sized lead, but then they topple over, and they are out of the race already. And now it's between Little Fokker and Shababy. Right now, Shababy has a slight edge over Little Fokker, and now they go into the final stretch and get the first win. It was looking pretty good for Bolo Brown, but I guess they just could not keep control after going around that turn up there. This is not the first DNF we've seen, but it's definitely one of the earliest so far. This could be a break that Little Fokker and Shababy needed, as well as possibly Rank Hank, depending on how they do in the next 3 races. For the second lap, Bolo Brown does have that edge again. Little Fokker seems to be trying to stay upright, but they're shaking quite a bit, actually. That could be because of the track, but I'm not entirely sure. But for now, Bolo Brown has a lead. Can they stay upright going around that turn? They almost didn't, but they managed to do it this time. But they have multiple more turns to go, and so far they're handling it well. Not only that, but they have a huge lead over everybody else, and they're going towards the finish line perfectly straight, and they get the win. Finishing a little bit slower than Esakan was at 16.32. But hey, any chance to move on allows you more opportunities to improve. But with a victory like that, that is exactly what Bolo Brown needed. Otherwise, they could have been in trouble if they couldn't pick up a win. Meanwhile, Rank Hank is struggling just a little bit. In fact, look at that right out the gate. Rank Hank is falling behind quickly, while Bolo Brown is pulling away, and Little Fokker and Shababy seem to be relatively even. But Bolo Brown is looking again to try and stay upright. It looks like they actually, each time they go around that specific turn, they start to go almost sideways, but they manage to rebalance themselves and stay on their feet. They certainly don't want a repeat of that first race, and so far they haven't, and they get another win. So now they're in a much better position than they were before. Meanwhile, Shababy finishes in 2nd, Little Fokker in 3rd, and Rank Hank in 4th. And it's looking a lot better for Bolo Brown. In fact, I think he actually now has the lead for points. If not, it is awfully close. have one race left with this group before today's final. And Bolo Brown easily gets that edge. In fact, they're constantly getting a bigger and bigger gap between them and True Baby and Little Fokker. Now, can they stay upright? Look at they almost seem to be shaking a bit as they go around that turn. It may be because of the weight distribution, but as they go around each of those curves, they tilt a concerning amount. But they haven't done it since the first race where they fall over, and they managed to get 3 wins. So despite that DNF at the beginning, they are already moving on. So that DNF doesn't even matter now. And now as we look at the points one more time, it looks like it'll be Shababy joining Bolo Brown in the finals. But they will have to kick it up a notch going up against Esakon and Arlo. Let's take a look at the points one more time. And it is Shababy who will be joining Bolo Brown. And here is our final group for today. Esakon and Arlo seem to be the speedier of the groups. Let's see if that keeps consistent in this final grouping. So far it is actually Bolo Brown who has a lead, but now Arlo is getting just enough of a speed boost to pass him. And Esakon is doing just about the same. So now Bolo Brown has quickly gone from first to third. In fact, Bolo Brown almost went on his side again. That got dangerously close, and that caused them to lose some momentum, allowing a bigger lead for Arlo and Esakon. And it is Esakon who gets the win, finishing with a new fast time of 15.26. A phenomenal performance by Esakon. They are breaking speed records left and right now, even their own. While Bolo Brown, having a promising start, was trailing behind by the end, they definitely want to pick up the pace and not risk falling over. But now as this race goes on, it is Bolo Brown who once again starts out well, but by the time they get around that turn, Esakon and Arlo have passed him once more, and Bolo Brown seems to be having trouble maintaining the speed that they have at the beginning, which is absolutely dangerous. But in the final stretch, Esakon got a slight edge over Arlo, who's looking to pass him. I'm not sure. It is really close to call. Not quite the speed record, but that is a close race. I believe Esakon had just enough of a lead in front of him that he was able to keep the win, and they're giving it to him. Or her. But you can't get much closer than that, that's for sure. But now there are 2 races left. It's looking really good for Esakon already, and definitely favorable for Arlo. And look at this, Shababy is falling behind. Bolo Brown is keeping up currently, but usually by this time they are starting to fall behind. And that seems to be the case here, though not by nearly as much as before. If they can stay on their feet, they might be able to make something happen here. But for now, Esakon and Arlo are not making it easy. And Esakon gets a 3rd consecutive win. And they almost break the speed record again. They were off by just 1/100th of a second to tie it. But Esakon is in a very similar position to Giorgio, who was denied a sweep in the first group that appeared in, but when they got to the finals, they were at least able to get a sweep there. This could be the 3rd racer to do so, to get a sweep, I mean. And Esakon already is in front of Bolo, while Arlo was struggling a little bit, but going around that turn, they are able to maintain their speed a little bit. And now they are in another position where they're trying to fight for first with Esakon. But Esakon already has a good lead. Will Arlo be able to close that gap? They definitely did, but as they got into the lane merger, he tried to knock Esakon out of the way and failed, causing him to lose some momentum, and Esakon gets a sweep. That being said, Essakan and Arlo will be the ones moving on to the grand finals. Valiant effort by Bolo Brown and Shababy. Better luck next time, as they say. But with that, we have 4 people ready for the grand final. Everyone, welcome to day number 3 of the custom mail-in tournament. We will immediately start by introducing Old Sarge, Brian Oldford, Raw Sun God, and Soren. Let's see how each of these 4 do on this course. And as we begin, they're actually staying relatively side by side, but then Brian Oldford starts going a little bit faster than the rest. And around that turn he goes, and his lead is just getting bigger and bigger as he gets further down the track. And now everyone else is completely off camera, except for that moment right there. But look at this, he just seems to be getting further and further away from the competition, heads into the straightaway, and easily gets the first victory. And he finishes with a 15.86. Right now, Essakan from day 2 holds the speed record with a 15.26. But at this point, we're seeing that finishing under 16 seconds is a little bit more promising than obviously if you don't. But now, Brian Oldford is in a much better position, probably breathing a sigh of relief right now after a great finish like that. And as the second race started, he did actually slow down just a tad and then accelerated out of nowhere. And now he's got the lead again. And so far, as he's gotten the lead, he doesn't give it back up. And he just seems to be getting faster as he progresses down the track, and he gets another easy victory. Although I will say it looked like Old Sarge might have been a little bit close at that time, and Brian Oldford finished at 16 seconds even. It's not often you see someone finish right on the dot of a second mark. So while he did get a second victory, he was a little bit slower, and the other competitors were closing in on him just a little bit. And it looks like he doesn't want that to happen again, as he's already got a decent-sized lead. But look at this, Old Sarge is not too far behind him, actually. They go around the divisive split turns, and they get into the lane merger. Brian Oldford is still in the lead, but Old Sarge is a lot closer this time around. And now Brian Oldford, despite automatically moving on, seems to be getting slower with each race, because that does surprise me, actually, because he is seemingly moving faster from my view, but I guess he's actually going slower. I guess he gets those bursts of speed, but isn't able to maintain it, actually. But now 1 race left. Brian Oldford is already moving on. Old Sarge has the highest odds of joining him. And as long as he finishes in front of the other 2, he will be fine. Brian Oldford currently has a lead. Old Sarge is trying to close that gap. It's hard for them to do that when they're on opposite ends of the track, but as they get into the final merger, Brian Oldford is able to get the sweep, actually. And yeah, it looks like he actually did finish slower each time. And Raw Sun God got a DNF at the very end. And not too far from the finish line either. But it looks like they're still going to give him a point despite the fact that he did not finish. I guess at this point it doesn't necessarily matter, but still. So Brian Oldford is our latest sweeper. And now we have McNeil, Papa, Dusty Miles, and Variant Skunkwork. That is quite the unusual name, but if you want to stand out, sometimes that's what you gotta do. As we begin, Dusty Miles, a very popular racer around here, started off with a slight lead, then lost it and gained it back again. He's currently in contention with Skunk, who's not making it easy for Dusty Miles to hold on to that lead as he keeps getting closer and closer, ever so slightly. Around the final turn, down the hill, Dusty Miles still has that lead and he gets the first victory. Finishing with a 15.34, now that is the kind of speed I was expecting from Brian. In fact, that's what it looked like he had. But according to the timer, Dusty Miles is a little bit quicker. Almost getting a new speed record, which Dusty Miles has been able to do before, for long periods of time no less. So let's see if he can do it here. Race number 2 begins. Dusty Miles and Skunk are taking off a little bit, although Papa is trying to stay on par with them. In fact, he's doing relatively well with it, staying relatively even to where Skunk is, but Dusty Miles is taking this opportunity to get as much of a lead as he can before the last stretch of the track. And as he does so, no one is anywhere near him and he gets another victory. Finishing with a 15.23, I believe. Double checking, yes, that is the fastest time we've had on this competition so far. I was just talking about how Dusty Miles has been able to get speed records before, and here it's no different. It wasn't by much, but every little bit helps. Now the question remains, will anybody be able to finish under 15 seconds throughout this entire competition? So now we have 2 races in the bag, 2 more to go with this group. And Dusty Miles gets an early lead, actually, with Skunk not too far behind and Papa not too far behind Skunk. But any lead you can get early on can really help you as you get further down the track. The Skunk has been able to keep up with Dusty Miles, but as Dusty gets the lead, he hasn't lost it. And a clean turn around that last curve, and he gets another victory. Let's see what time he got. 15.59, that is a little bit slower, and we had an interesting collision back there. And Skunk is actually gonna get a DNF alongside McNeil. It looked like McNeil actually bumped into Skunk somewhere, causing him to spin out. Let's see what the replay shows. So Skunk actually went sideways for a moment and lost all his momentum because of it. And as McNeil approaches him, yeah, he actually just ran into Skunk from the back. And Skunk almost managed to finish because of it, but he did not have enough of a push to do so. But now it looks like Dusty Miles is already moving on. I'm not sure who's going to join him right now. I would have said Skunk, but after that DNF, it blew the door wide open for other opportunities. But Dusty Miles is looking to be another sweeper in today's video. And given how everything has been going so far, it looks like he's going to be able to do it. And he will. Without any issue whatsoever. Skunk finishing in second, that may have saved him. We'll have to look at the tally in just a moment. Almost breaking the speed record again, no less. But Dusty Miles is our newest sweeper. And I think we may actually have a tiebreaker on our hands. Because it looked like Papa and Skunk both got 9. And that is exactly what happened. Skunk, with a second place finish, keeps his hopes alive, but he has to do a couple extra races alongside Papa. And if it works how it's been in the last few tournaments, they will race twice, and whoever gets the overall fastest time will be the winner. And right now, Skunk is doing everything he can to hold on to a lead. Especially after that DNF, you do not want a repeat of history in that case. But he is coasting along without much contention from Papa, and he gets that victory that he so desperately needed. Meanwhile, Papa finishes in second, at least a couple seconds behind him. You look at that, he's almost at the finish line, and only now does Papa show up. It's looking pretty good for Skunk right now. Let's see how they do in the second race. So far, Skunk has a slight edge on him, but it looked like Papa closed that gap already, and now he has the lead, but then Skunk immediately takes it back. But this is a little bit closer than the last race was. And now, as I mentioned that, Skunk is pulling away. He gets the higher but tighter turn, and now he has the inside lane as he goes into the lane merger and heads towards the finish line. and he gets another win, so I believe that means Skunk will be the one to move on alongside Dusty Miles to today's finals. A great fight by Papa, but they fell just short. So now with that tiebreaker sorted out, Dusty Miles and Skunk will be the one to move on. So now as we get into the finals, Old Sarge, Skunk, Brian Oldford, and Dusty Miles will race to see who moves on. The top two will progress. These are the four supposedly fastest racers of today's video. So let's see how they do when they go up against each other. Right now it is Dusty Miles who has the lead, and he is one of two racers here that has a sweep alongside Brian Oldford. These two are going after each other, so both of them have a chance to be our first undefeated racer right now. But Dusty Miles is the one to cross the finish line first, so he's the one who will keep his hopes alive, and he finishes with a new speed record of 15.19. I almost said 15.9. But 15.19, that is getting ever so closer to the 15-second mark. I believe it is possible, but they will have to have little to no obstacles in their way and staying off the walls as much as they can. This is looking pretty good for Dusty Miles already, as he's broken the speed record twice today already. Possibly even 3 times. But now he does have a good lead. Brian Oldford is further behind this time around, and he's currently in contention with Papa and Skunk. But Dusty Miles is leaving everybody in his dust, and he gets another win, while the other 3 are struggling to keep up with him. But Brian Oldford, despite no longer being undefeated or being able to get another sweep, he is in a much better position than the other 2. And Brian Oldford pulls another stunt again like he does at the beginning, where it seems like he starts off slow, and then at some point he just picks up the pace, but he still is unable to catch Dusty Miles going around the bend, and Dusty Miles is just keeping that gap wide open. He bounces off the walls just slightly, but he gets another victory, so he will be moving on. And Dusty Miles is just one victory away from being this tournament's first undefeated racer. And he is putting up consistently quick times, making it difficult for everybody else. And as the final race begins, he was alongside Brian and Skunk, but as they got to the first bend, he pulls away quite quickly, actually, and now everyone else is far behind. Dusty Miles would probably need to spin out or something to allow anyone to pass him, and he has not been doing that, and he is undefeated. And he finishes with a 15.02. He almost broke the 15-second mark. Now I am fully confident that it is possible. Undefeated racer, breaking the speed record several times, Dusty Miles, going forward into the grand finals, will be a fierce competitor. But he will be joined by Brian Oldford in the grand finals, alongside our previous winners. So let's see what happens next. Thank you all so much for watching. See you at day number 4 of our 3rd custom mail-in tournament. Let's introduce the first group for today. Killer Kowalski, Sugar Booty Racing, Road Rage Racing, and Rico the Robot. We've got some veterans in this group, so this ought to be interesting. Killer Kowalski, for example, is already in the lead, but the gap isn't very big. Sugar Booty Racing actually passes him alongside Rico. As they get into another merger, it is actually Sugar who is out in front, but here comes Rico trying to take the lead from him. And it looks like Sugar's currently holding on to it. And now, in the last curve into the straightaway, Sugar Booty has the lead, and they get the first win. They finish with a 16.33. Our current speed record is held by Dusty Miles, who was just short of breaking the 15-second mark, finishing with a 15.02 at one point. But look at this, Killer Kowalski, a fan favorite and a titan in these races, actually finished in 4th. Started off strong, but seemed to fall behind somehow. In race number 2, Killer Kowalski is getting a slight lead over Rico and Sugar. And as we get into the lane splits, he does have a slight lead, I think. But Sugar is making it difficult, and Sugar Booty Racing now has the lead. Killer Kowalski trying to catch back up. As they split again, Sugar is getting further and further away. And heading into their final stretch, no one is anywhere near them, and they get another victory. And Killer Kowalski finishes in 2nd this time, allowing him to breathe a little bit more after that scare in the first race. But they will need to keep that up, otherwise they could have an early exit. But now Sugar Booty is just one win away from stamping their spot in today's finals, and 2 races away from being the next person to get a sweep, which we've had a small handful of people do already. And Killer Kowalski started off with the lead, but as they went around that wide turn, they lost that lead. And then they had the tighter turn, they tried to get the lead back, but Sugar Booty said, "No way, I am holding on to this, you cannot take this from me." And now with that lead gotten back, they've gotten a bigger lead, and they finished in 1st yet again. And it looked like Killer Kowalski was going to finish in 2nd, but Rico, I believe, was able to snag it from him as they crossed the finish line. Let's take another look. Killer Kowalski tried to stop Rico from passing him, but I don't think it worked in the end. It did not. Killer Kowalski finished in 3rd. This is quite surprising. Killer Kowalski is known for being a titan in these competitions, but they seem to be shaken today. They start off strong, and then something happens that causes them to start falling behind. This is usually where that starts to happen, because right now they are side by side with Rico and Sugar. But look at this, Sugar Booty Racing is taking off once more. And Killer Kowalski is now at the point where he's slightly falling behind. He is a lot closer this time, but he is in 3rd. This is quite dangerous, and Rico the robot stops Killer Kowalski. I believe he ended up finishing in 3rd. This could be a shock to the Races and Fun community. Rico did not want Killer Kowalski finishing in front of him, and it looks like it might have paid off. And ladies and gentlemen, a shock to the community as Killer Kowalski is out already. But we have to move on and introduce our second group, which has James Ironbeard, Miss Maple, Roxanne Marie, and the Hammer. The race has already begun, and James Ironbeard has a slight edge over the Hammer. But as they get into the splits, will that change? It doesn't look like it has. Each time they go around that turn, the lanes will split and merge respectively, I should say. And James Ironbeard is currently holding on to that lead. And it looks like he's gotten just enough of one that he's able to cross the finish line without any hassle, finishing with a good time of 15.34. Meanwhile, here come the rest of the racers. Miss Maple finishing in 4th, Roxanne Marie finishing in 3rd. I know Roxanne Marie has a slightly longer name, but just for the sake of time, I'll call them Roxanne Marie for short. So after the first race, favor is for James Ironbeard, while the Hammer brings up the rear in 2nd, in terms of who will be able to move on. As we begin the second race, they're actually side by side right now, and they are sharing the same half of the lanes. James Ironbeard fell behind just slightly, but gained the lead back. Now has the inside turn, and now he's got an even bigger lead. However, the Hammer is trying to stay in contention with him. But something around that last turn caused him to slow down. But James Ironbeard spun around, and the hammer found his window and took it. So James Ironbeard will not be able to get a sweep as a result, and he will not be able to stay undefeated. For some reason, as he went down that hill, his front end popped upwards, causing him to lose control for just long enough to allow Hammer to pass him. As they always say, it is not over until it's over. But James Ironbeard and the Hammer, as a result, are now tied with 8 points each. And now James Ironbeard tried to lunge forward at the start of the race, but the Hammer is already up alongside him, but they are splitting up this time around. Let's see if that makes a difference. Right now, James Ironbeard has that lead. And now will he be able to hold on to it? And even if he does, will he be able to stay straight as he gets into that final straightaway? Going around the turn, down the hill, he is on his feet and staying forward this time, and he gets the win. And he finishes with a slightly more consistent time, while the Hammer finishes in second, Roxanne in third, and Miss Maple in fourth. Yeah, at this point, I would have said anything under 16 seconds is promising. However, with how close some races have gotten to 15 seconds, anything under 15 and a half will give you a bit more breathing room. But with that win, James Ironbeard currently has the lead in points, while the Hammer is in second. The other two are pretty much out at this point, but they can throw a wrench into things for these other two. And they are staying relatively close together. In order for the Hammer to move on, he needs to at least finish in front of James Ironbeard right now. And he is closing that gap ever so slightly as they get further down the track. But James Ironbeard is trying to hold on to it yet again. So far is able to, and I believe James Ironbeard will be moving on alongside the Hammer. Whereas Miss Maple and Roxanne end up short. Even if they did tie, actually, now that I think about it, I don't think they would do a tiebreaker considering they're both moving on. We did have a tiebreaker in the last video, so having two videos in a row that involved a tiebreaker would be a bit of a shocker. But now here's our final four: James Ironbeard, the Hammer, Sugar Booty Racing, and Rico the Robot. They've all been pulling up relatively decent times overall. But now only the top two of these four will be moving on to the grand finals. And so far, James Ironbeard has the lead. But Sugar Booty Racing is known to pick up the pace around this point. And they are close behind James. Can they close that gap? It's looking like it's going to be a bit of a struggle. James Ironbeard goes down the hill and is looking to grab the win. Here comes Sugar, but they could not catch him. Meanwhile, Rico ends up going backwards, finishing in fourth. I'm not sure what caused them to spin around. They just started going sideways and couldn't correct themselves in time. So now things are looking even better for James. But the Hammer now has some competition with Sugar Booty Racing. But look at this, they start the race all side by side. Let's see how the lane split affects them. And it looks like it's currently in favor of James Ironbeard as he takes off alongside the Hammer, who has the lead for a moment, but James Ironbeard is looking to take it back, and it looks like he will, though not by a whole lot. And Sugar Booty Racing is not too far behind them either. But as we get into the final merger, the Hammer tries to pass James Ironbeard, but did not have enough space to pull it off. And look at that, it looks like James Ironbeard actually popped up into the air for a second once again, but he was able to fix it quickly and hold on to that lead. So now he's got 2 wins. 1 more will stamp his spot in the grand finals. But there's been a bit of a back and forth between the Hammer and Sugar right now. And Sugar is clearly not happy about that as they take an early lead. And as the lane splits happen, James Ironbeard is looking to grab the lead yet again. And he does, and Sugar Booty falls into 3rd place. While the Hammer is the one trying to keep up with James. Around the last turn, into the straightaway, James Ironbeard looks like he went airborne once more, but he saved it and grabbed another victory. Meanwhile, Rico finishes backwards again. Yeah, Rico seems to be having trouble facing straight, or facing forward rather, on the straightaways. But now James Ironbeard is already in the grand finals, and currently favorite to join him is for the Hammer, but only by a point. Sugar Booty Racing needs to finish in front of the Hammer in order to keep their hopes alive of moving on to the grand finals alongside James Ironbeard. But all 4 are relatively close to each other right now, and Sugar Booty was doing well at first, but after that turn, the Hammer takes 2nd place back from them. And it looks like they might be joining James Ironbeard. But look at this! Off camera, it looked like Sugar Booty was able to actually get in front of him. I believe we will have another tiebreaker on our hands. That is a rarity, and this is already the 2nd one we've seen in this tournament. Now, if you're just tuning into the tournament for the first time, the way this will work is they will race twice. And whoever gets the fastest time between those 2 races will be the one to progress. These 2 have been putting up a fight with each other. Sugar Booty usually starts off strong, and then the Hammer starts off, but ends up going a little bit stronger. And this is usually where that becomes a little bit more apparent, but they are staying neck and neck for the moment, with a slight edge given to the Hammer, who now has a slightly bigger lead. And now they go into the final turn. They got a little bit slow, and Sugar Booty takes off and gets the win, finishing with 16.25. So now, in order for the Hammer to move on, they will need to not only finish in front of Sugar in this 2nd race, but they will need to finish with a time faster than 16.25, which I believe they can do. But Sugar Booty is putting the pressure on them oh so immensely. And now look at this, Sugar Booty is currently in front of the Hammer. Will the Hammer be able to pass him? It looks like he will. And he has the inside lane going into the outside. And Sugar Booty's looking to close that gap once more. Now has the inside lane going into the straightaway. Sugar Booty currently has the lead, but the Hammer passes him, does a nose block. But he finishes slightly slower than Sugar Booty did in the first race, so I believe Sugar will be the one to move on. In fact, in all honesty, if the Hammer didn't do that nose block, he might have been able to pull it off. But it is James and Sugar moving on, and now we have 4 more slots to fill. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day number 5 of our custom mail-in tournament. Let's see who will start us off for today. Raging Ricky, Tim McCall, MDG, and Iceman. And here we go! Currently, I was about to say it was Tim who has the lead, but now MDG grabs that lead, and Iceman was the one in 2nd. But now with MDG taking off, leaving everyone else in the dust, let's see if he can hold on to that lead. Because some of our racers in the past, they start off strong and then something happens, causing them to either fall behind or fall apart in some way. MDG is not doing any of that, and he actually stays off the walls the entire way through the straightaway, grabbing the first victory of today. And he does finish with a 16.10. Right now, that is not the greatest time. And look at that, he actually, right before going down that hill, seemed to be shaking a bit. But in any case, our fastest time right now is still 15.02, which was set by Dusty Miles, who is actually at this point kind of known for setting some speed records. But back to this group, MDG is currently in the lead with points. Iceman not too far behind. As we begin the second race, MDG has his nose out in front of the others, while Iceman and Tim McCall, alongside Raging Ricky actually, they all seem to be doing relatively well, but at least one of them seemed to be falling behind. That might have been Iceman, but I'm not entirely sure. They're going by pretty fast. The MDG does have the lead currently. Around the final curve, down the hill, does start to go sideways, but corrects himself, gets another win. And that was actually Iceman in second, while Raging Ricky, I believe, was the one who finished in fourth. Oh no, I am way off. Raging Ricky was in third, actually. The one who finished in fourth was Tim. And sometimes when there's just a lot going on, sometimes your brain takes a minute to process everything. But I am loving the custom designs they put on these vehicles. Props to the creativity for everyone. And now MDG is looking pretty solid right now with 2 wins already under his belt. Now looking for a third. As he goes back into the lane mergers, it is Iceman currently in second, but Raging Ricky is right on his tail. Those turns could make all the difference, but currently MDG is holding on to that lead. Here comes Iceman though, trying to catch him, but as he gets close, he spins out and falls into second, and it looks like, if I had to guess, him spinning around caused Raging Ricky to bump into him and slow down, resulting in a DNF. Or maybe, from the looks of things, it looks like they actually both just kind of spun around. But Raging Ricky wasn't so lucky, as he ended up with a DNF, and Tim managed to grab third as a result. But MDG is already progressing to the next stage, and Iceman is in a great position to join him, with 9 points, while the others only have 4 and 5 respectively. So Iceman would basically need to DNF, while one of the other two finish in first for any chance of moving on at all. And even then, that would result in a probable tiebreaker. But for now, MDG is in a familiar spot in first place. Raging Ricky actually did have second at the moment. As they go around the turn, Iceman grabs second place from him. Was he able to keep it? It looks like he will. And now, as a result, MDG is our latest racer to get a sweep. We've actually had more and more of that happen. But as of now, we only have one fully undefeated racer at this point, that being Dusty Miles. But for now, let's see who in the second group will move on to today's finals. Between EP, the Impossible E, Crankster Sr., and Nick Devers, who has a vehicle that looks a little familiar, because in the past day or so of this tournament, another racer had a car that looked almost exactly like that. But currently he does have first place, but he's got one of the racers coming up behind him. I believe that is Crankster Sr. And look at that, he's closing the gap. He does have the inside lane, and he takes full advantage, grabs the lead away from Nick Devers, but Nick is coming up behind him, but it wasn't enough. Crankster Sr. grabs the first win of this group. Meanwhile, the other racers are taking their sweet, sweet time. And the Impossible E was the last one to finish. That does make you wonder what cause would lead to somebody falling that far behind. Maybe they got stuck. Maybe they didn't do so well around the turns. We're not entirely sure. But it's already looking pretty good for Craigster, alongside Nick no less. But there's still 3 races to go. Pretty much anything can happen. Earlier on, we had somebody who went from a DNF to finishing in first 3 times in a row. So don't count anybody out just yet. And after that lane split, Nick and Craigster are pretty much dead even. But Craigster gets a slight edge over Nick as they get into that merger, and now they split again. And Craigster Sr. is currently holding on to that lead by a thread or 2. And he bumps into the wall just slightly, but stays straight and grabs a second win, finishing with a great time of 15.37. Meanwhile, EP barely coasts across the line, and the Impossible E almost caught up to them as a result. The look that looks like his back end clipped the side of the track as he started going downhill, causing him to lose so much momentum. And the Impossible E came up close behind him, almost passing him at the last moment. But Craigster Sr. and Nick Devers finish in first and second again, respectively. Let's see if that happens again. Right now, Nick pokes his nose out in front for a moment, but Craigster Sr. sees this and takes the lead back. And they're sharing lanes right now, and they're going back and forth. Now it is Nick who's out in front. And as the lanes merge once more, Nick is holding on to that lead, but here comes Craigster Sr. one more time, trying to get any sort of momentum that'll help him pass Nick. But Nick has the inside lane, and he skids sideways, allowing Craigster Sr. to squeak past him to get another victory. And Nick actually does not finish, unless someone pushes him forward, but the Impossible E did not want that to happen. Nick Devers with a DNF. He started off good, but as he went down the hill, he went sideways, and that caused him to lose so much speed to the point where he just could not cross the finish line. Granted, he did finish in second the first couple of times, so that could be his saving grace, but that definitely does help someone like EP keep their chances alive. So as long as that happens again, this could be exactly what EP needs. But now we have one race left out of the main group here. And it is currently Craigster Sr. I was about to say Nick Devers, but Craigster Sr. comes around the turn from off camera and takes the lead. But Nick Devers is staying hot on his trail. They both have an inside lane, I think. But Craigster Sr. managed to keep that lead, preventing Nick Devers from passing him. But with that second place finish, I believe Nick Devers saved himself from a shock exit. Meanwhile, the Impossible E once more coasts across the finish line in fourth. Think about some of these times they've been pulling off. Some of them have been good, some of them not so good. But they've been getting somewhat close to our speed record. Usually just short by about half a second or so. But I believe, yep, it will be... Oh no, wait, we do have a tiebreaker! I stand corrected. I thought Nick Devers was moving on. And while he still has a chance, he will have to fight EP for it. This is the third video in a row that involves a tiebreaker. We almost never see these, but now it's almost becoming commonplace in this tournament. And if you're tuning in for the first time, the way these tiebreakers work is they will have 2 races, and whoever pulls up the fastest time between those 2 races will be the ultimate winner between the 2, and they will move on. And right now, Nick Devers is cruising to a first place finish. And it took EP a little while to get there. That DNF from Nick Devers earlier put a wrench into things, but he is quickly looking to redeem himself, and now, in order for EP to move on, not only will he have to finish in front of Nick Devers, but he'll have to finish faster than 15.83. But Nick Devers is not making it easy. He will have to spin out or something in order for EP to have any shot at this point. But the fact that EP has made it this far and has gone far enough to do a tiebreaker, fighting alongside Nick, is something to behold. That being said, Nick Devers will get that second victory, giving EP no chance to move on. So it will be Nick Devers joining Craigster Sr. in today's finals. But that was a close call. That DNF did scare some people, I'm sure. But Craigster Sr. is our next sweeper for sure. But now our final four for today. Iceman, Craigster Sr., MDG, and Nick Devers. Craigster Sr. does have that sweep. He's looking to stay undefeated, and he has the lead already, and a decent-sized one, no less, when you consider how far they can get at the start of the race. But look at this, as I mentioned this, MDG closes that gap, but Craigster Sr. is picking up the pace once more, going around the turn, and now MDG is fighting with Nick Devers for second place, whereas Craigster Sr. goes down the hill, but he spins around, allowing the others to catch up to him. And I think Craigster Sr. was going to get third until he was pushed forward by Iceman. That at least stops Craigster Sr. from getting an undefeated title. And he was given second. He might have gotten third if it wasn't for Iceman. So let's see how he takes advantage of this situation. By staying relatively even, Iceman slips a little behind the rest of the pack. And as the lanes split, it is currently, I think, Craigster Sr. who had the lead, but here comes Nick Devers. But as they merge together, Nick Devers is actually back in second. Craigster Sr. does have the lead again. He needs to stay straight if he wants to avoid any potential risks like that again, and that's exactly what he does, grabbing the win. While Nick Devers finishes in second, MDG in third, and Iceman in fourth. It is entirely possible that Iceman figured, you know what, if I'm not going to be able to move on, I'm going to help somebody else to do so. That is an example of good sportsmanship right there. But now with that little fiasco, Craigster Sr. does have the lead in points again, but only by one, as he is now with 8 points, with MDG holding 7. So let's see how these 4 racers do in this third race, which will help solidify some of these racers' chances a little bit more. Nick Devers actually was in third, but he managed to pass MDG. Now Craigster Sr. is the only one in front of him right now. But with that in mind, Craigster Sr. does have a great lead at this point, so even if he does go sideways, he still has a good opportunity to stay in first, and that's exactly what they did, finishing with a phenomenal 15.2. Now if those digits were swapped around to a 15.02, he would tie Dusty Miles for the fastest time in this tournament so far. But now with one race left, it's looking a lot better for Craigster Sr. this time around. As for who will join him, it's mostly between MDG and Nick Devers. MDG currently has 9, while Nick Devers has 8. It's basically a matter of whoever finishes in front of the other, though this does set up for the possibility of yet another tiebreaker. But Nick Devers will need to finish in front of MDG for that to happen. And so far, MDG was in front of Nick Devers, still is, while Craigster Sr. is looking to redeem himself with another victory as he stays in first, almost stays off the walls, and crosses the finish line first. And Nick Devers actually does finish in front of MDG, and if Iceman was able to pass MDG at the last moment, that would have spelled his end, but he managed to hold on to third, so I believe we will have yet another tiebreaker. We've gone from rarity to common with these things. And it's certainly rare to have multiple tiebreakers in the same video. Nick Devers has been fighting tooth and nail to stay in this tournament. And now it is MDG he has to go up against in order to progress. And he was in the lead for a little bit, but now MDG is in front of him. But look at this, Nick Devers closes that gap once more, and now he has the lead. They're going back and forth right now, and here comes MDG going in the inside lane, and he spins Nick Devers around, causing him to be able to get the win. That just goes to show how close these races can get and how anything can change even at the last moment. But now in order for Nick Devers to move on, not only does he have to finish in front of MDG, but now he needs a faster time than what MDG just pulled. It is definitely possible, but right now his chances are not looking very good. He does grab the lead from MDG, but they have been going back and forth this entire time. And it looks to be the case here as MDG catches right back up with no problem. But Nick Devers does have a current lead and the inside lane. Let's see if he uses that to his advantage. He does for a moment, but then he spins out, causing him to slow down. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough. I can't remember exactly what the time was in the first race. I think it was 16.8 something, so maybe. No, Nick Devers falls just short. But that's about as hard as you can fight without moving on, so props to Nick Devers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day number 6 of our latest custom mail-in tournament. Let's meet the first group that shall start us off. We have Hot Wheels boys, Rob, Mr. Dark, and Tabo, and the race begins. And already Rob is falling quickly behind, while the other three are staying relatively even. But going around that first split, it looks like Tabo might have a slight lead, but here comes Dark. And now he's got the lead, and look at him going faster and faster, trying to get that gap as big as possible. And he started off a little slower than Tabo, but now he's flying right towards the finish line, and he gets the first victory, finishing at 15.75. So far, the fastest time is still held by Dusty Miles, who has a 15.02 under their belt. And oh, it looks like we have someone who not only, I believe they finished, but not in the most stylistic way. Actually, I don't see them coming across the finish line. It looks like they must have flown off the track at some point and landed upside down. That could be a very major injury. So Hot Wheels boys starts off in a bad position in more ways than one. That may have given an opening to Rob that he so desperately needed, because look at this, at the start of this race as well, he already loses some speed when compared to the other three. But as the lanes split and divide, it is Dark and Tabo fighting for that first place position, but Hot Wheels boys is hot on their trail. Looks like he's at least able to stay on the track this time. I'm not sure what caused him to fly off before. For now, though, it is Dark who will get a second win. Tabo wasn't too far behind there. And there comes Rob. But what? I am not sure what's going on with Hot Wheels boys today. It looks like he starts off strong and then somehow he dislodges himself from the track and ends up in a less than favorable position, either on his side or upside down. Either way, that is 2 non-finishes already. He is, unfortunately, pretty much out at this point. The other 3 racers are now just fighting for the 2 spots to move on. And here we go into race number 3. History is starting to repeat itself a little bit, but it looks like Dark is able to get a slight edge over the other 2 that he's been competing with so far. The lanes merge again, and it looks like Tabo was able to pass up Hot Wheels boys. But Mr. Dark has very little competition right now, as Tabo has fallen a decent distance back. And Mr. Dark is getting a sweep so far. He just needs one more to get that full sweep in this group. And here comes Rob again. What is going on with Hot Wheels, boys? This will be 3 non-finishes already. I'm wondering if Hot Wheels boys is a little top heavy, because it looks like they end up on their sides at the very least right after a turn. But the fact that this kind of thing has happened 3 separate times definitely begs a question as to what ultimately causes it. But now Mr. Dark is already on their way to the finals. Tabo is in a favorable position to join him. But Rob, so far, has been a bit lucky considering Hot Wheels boys, who normally has a decent-sized lead over them, ends up not finishing. In fact, I think I saw Hot Wheels boys just get stuck or something there, because he just seemed to vanish off the camera. Now it's just Mr. Dark and Tabo again. Well, Mr. Dark already is heading towards the finish. Tabo nowhere in sight, and he gets a sweep. We've already gotten a decent amount of people who've gotten sweeps so far, and now Dark is among them. Yeah, look at this. Upside down twice, on their side twice, and once again it is right after a turn. A very unfortunate experience for Hot Wheels boys. But I believe Mr. Dark and Tabo will progress to the finals today. So let's see who in Group 2 will join them. And in that second group we have Lewis, Jesse the Taurus, Flamethrower, and Sam Hall. As we begin, I was about to say they were all staying relatively close, but as they got to the first curve, they definitely started splitting up a bit. And now we have one racer alone. I'm trying to remember which one that is. The names don't stay up for very long, but I will be able to name them in just a second. But they do grab the win. They do finish pretty close to our speed record. They were just off by about 1/10 of a second or so. But at least all 4 finished this time. And it was Sam Hall who got the win, followed closely behind by Flamethrower. Meanwhile, Jesse the Taurus in 3rd and Lewis in 4th. And now Sam Hall has that lead. And it looks like, based on how they're starting already, he's going to be able to hold on to it as long as he can stay on his wheels and keep up that speed. Around the curve he goes, and no one is anywhere near them. Around the last turn, down the hill, into the straightaway, and they get a second victory. And they are putting up quite the impressive times. Some racers, they're lucky if they even break 16 seconds, but some other racers, especially Dusty, have been close to breaking 15 seconds. But our Flamethrower friend finishes in 2nd again. It looks like everyone will have finished in the same positions as they did in the first race. So now we have 2 left for this group. Sam Hall is already 1 race away, or 1 win away, I should say, from already progressing to the next phase. And look at this, he gets an early start, and so far, once he's grabbed that lead, he has not lost it. Flamethrower is a little bit closer behind him this time around, but Sam Hall is not making it any short of a challenge. And they go around the final turn, down the hill, into the straightaway, yet again grabbing another win. A little bit slower this time when compared to their other finishes. But Lewis actually grabbed 3rd place this time. But you could see even then how far behind they were, because Sam Hall and Flamethrower were already approaching the finish line, but you could still see them before the last turn. That's how big the gap could get. But Sam Hall is already progressing to the next round, so there's only 1 spot to fill for today's finals. And as this race begins, they are actually a little bit closer together. But look at this, Sam Hall going around the curve, launches himself, and he once again leaves everybody in the dust. Going around the straightaway, around the curve, down the hill, heading towards the finish line, and no one's going to stop him. And we have another sweep among the roster. Oh, look at this, a little bit of a collision towards the end between Lewis and Torres. And it did not end well for Torres. But take a look at that again. Because the first two finishers, it was pretty clean. But Lewis was trying to find a way around the Torres, who gave a nose block, but it ultimately backfired as they got spun around and did not finish. But it will be Sam Hall in Flamethrower, moving on to the final round for today. Now here we go, Sam Hall, Tabo, Mr. Dark, and Flamethrower. Based on times alone, I'd say the biggest threat currently between these four is Sam Hall, because he got pretty close a couple times to breaking the speed record. And look at this, he already has that lead. But Mr. Dark, who is ahead of the competition in the other group, is looking to make something happen, but he is struggling to do so, as Sam Hall is looking to stay undefeated, and so far is. And he will get the first win of the final group for today. And he finishes with a 15.51. Again, that's a little bit slower than some of his faster times that we've seen. That got pretty close to the 15.02 record. Now into race number 2. Flamethrower has a little bit more work this time around as he's going up against Mr. Dark here. And they are staying side by side for the moment. But Sam Hall has a slight edge over both of them. But it's not as big this time. Look at this, Flamethrower is actually looking to pass on Mr. Dark. I'm not sure, it doesn't look like he did. But everything could change in this straightaway. They are fighting for that second place position. But at the last moment, Mr. Dark was able to pull off a successful nose block. Take a look at this. They were going neck and neck, and Sam Hall saw him coming and stopped him in his tracks. Albeit not literally, but enough to stop him from passing him. Which puts Mr. Dark in a bit of a better position when it comes to his chances to progress. Meanwhile, Sam Hall is 2 races away from being our second racer that has not lost a race yet, the other being the aforementioned Dusty Miles. And it looks like these three are actually fighting a little bit harder this time, but as they went around that bend, Sam Hall got another decent-sized lead. And as I mentioned earlier, once he gets those leads, he has not lost them. And that shall remain the case here as he gets another win. He is automatically moving on to the grand finals and now just 1 win away from joining Dusty Miles in the very small category of undefeated racers. Now everybody is on the edges of their seats to see if Sam Hall can pull this off. I am sure Mr. Dark, Flamethrower, and Tabo will not make it easy for him. In fact, look at this. Mr. Dark actually had a slightly better start when compared to Sam, but then Sam grabs that lead back. But it's Flamethrower who is actually giving him some contention right now and is hot on his tail, trying to pass him, and it looks like he's going to do it. Yes, he will, and he has the inside. But then they both spin out. Sam Hall goes sideways, and he finishes in 3rd. So Dusty Miles shall remain the only undefeated racer. Sam Hall was very close. In fact, right there, he had an opportunity to keep that alive, and then he just could not get the speed he needed to get that final win. But he will still advance alongside Flamethrower. So another 2 spots have been filled, and we still have a few more to go. But now it looks like we have a grudge match going on, actually. Between Chewy Mandingo, Shababy, Wild Willie G, and Iceman. I'm not entirely sure what this is about, but it looks like it'll be in the format of a drag race. I'm not even sure who actually won that one. But it looks like there is quite the interesting finish line timer there. And it definitely was an absolute nail-biter. I'm not sure who got the win, though. They are giving it to both of them, actually. Wild Willie G and Iceman are declared to have finished at the same time. Are they going to do that again, or are they going to have a... Oh, no, we have a very distinct winner this time. I believe that was Wild Willie G, but I could be mixing him up with Iceman. Meanwhile, third and fourth between Chewy Mandingo. I am just surprised by this going on. I was not expecting this. But it is Wild Willie G who got that win, while Chewy Mandingo and Chubaby were very close. But here we go into race number 3. And it looks like it'll actually be Chewy Mandingo who gets the win this time. And I apologize, I have not been paying attention to the times, but just in case I get the speed record in this grudge match wrong, it'll at least will be mentioned in post, or in the comments, or in a future video, if needed. But yeah, another tie between Wild and Iceman. Even one tie is rare, but to see two is quite impressive. But now in this race here, Chewy Mandingo has a much more distinguishable lead and gets the win. And I'm not quite sure who grabbed second that time. It looks like it was Wild Willie G, followed closely by Iceman, and then Chubaby. So let's see if these victories will amount to anything. Wild Willie G of the Custom Mail-In Tournament. Let's meet who will start us off for today. We have Matt McNear, Rebel Racer, Tito, and Lero. Some of these racers have definitely been here before, but wait a minute. It looks like we have somebody who was stuck at the very start of the race. Matt McNear has a very delayed start to the race. It looked like they were just not moving as the other three took off, and it took them a while to get started. So now they have a lot of catching up to do. Hopefully, history will not repeat itself. But look at this, the first race of the day, and we have a new fastest time that also broke 15 seconds. Dusty Miles held on to the record ever since day 3, I believe. And Matt McNear was not nearly as fortunate. In fact, it looks like we have 2 non-finishers, Matt McNear being one and Tito being the other. But look how fast they went down that hill, and now they have the new record of 14.94. Meanwhile, we have 2 non-finishers. This definitely helps Lero. And everyone has a better start this time, although Matt McNear is quickly falling back. But now our 2 leaders are neck and neck. Let's see who will get that win. So far, Lero is actually falling back into second. And we have another victory here with a 14.98 this time. I believe they just got a 14.94, so that's not quite the fastest time, but the fact that they've broken 15 seconds twice already shows that they will be a threat in these races. Meanwhile, Tito ends up on their side once again. In the last video, we had a couple people who had some non-finishes. In fact, one person who didn't finish at all. Hopefully the same fate will not happen for Tito. But Matt McNear decided to go out in style in that race, while Rebel Racer continues his absolute dominance so far. So it looks like it's mostly between Rebel and Laro at this point. Tito has been starting off at least okay, but the way that vehicle is designed, it could be a little top-heavy. Now Rebel and Laro are fighting back and forth for that lead. So far it's in Rebel's favor. But here comes Laro again, trying to grab it, but then he goes sideways, allowing Rebel to get another win. And they actually finish above 15 seconds this time. But considering we now know what they are capable of, this won't make them any less intimidating. And it looks like we have yet another non-finish for Tito. I do like how they designed the front of that vehicle. I don't know if it's really helping or hindering them. All we know is that they have not finished yet. And look how far back Matt McNear even is. One can only imagine where Tito would be if they stayed on their wheels the entire time. But now Rebel Racer is already going to progress, and because Laro has finished all 3 times, in second no less, it looks like they will also be guaranteed due to the fact that Matt McNear only has 4, while Laro has 9. In order for Matt McNear to have any chance, Laro would need to not finish, and Matt McNear would need to finish in first. But considering Laro and Rebel have been absolutely crushing it, it looks like it will not happen. Rebel Racer gets a sweep, Laro finishes in second, and Rebel Racer actually ties Dusty Miles' old speed record. Are we going to have 2 non-finishes again? Yeah, this time Tito actually wound up on their backs, while Matt McNear was not able to go up that little slope around the turn. This was Rebel Racers and Laro's races to lose. So we have another sweep for Rebel. Let's see who will compete in the second group for today. We have Clyde, Chase Family, Diane, and Flip Gambino. We have at least a couple more fan favorites in this group. Flip Gambino being one of them, who is known to have a decent track record when it comes to speed, and here it is no different, because within a few seconds, he's left everyone else completely off camera. Look how cleanly he went around that turn towards the finish line easily, getting a victory, and oh my goodness, a new fastest time already, finishing under 14.5. I was just talking about how Flip Gambino has sometimes been recognized for their speed, and here is a prime example of that. For the longest time, Dusty Miles held on to the record, finishing just above 15 seconds. And here comes Flip Gambino out of nowhere, getting pretty close to the 14-second mark. The 14-second mark may be a little bit more challenging to break, but the fact that somebody just did that makes me wonder if it's actually a possibility. This is incredible. Rebel Racer seemed like he was a threat, but now Flip Gambino certainly is. We do have one person trying to compete with him. I believe that is Chase Family, but he gets a second victory, finishing slightly slower. In fact, he's still beaten the fastest time pulled off by Rebel. But to think he finished almost a half second slower that time and has still finished faster than anybody else has in this competition. If you want to know what a speed demon looks like, look no further. Now knowing that breaking 14 seconds might be a distinct possibility, I'm sure Flip Gambino would love to pull that off, to show his absolute dominance. He gets an early lead. Chase Family has been trying to contend with them, and sometimes it looks like they can, But as they go around each of those curves, Flip Gambino just seems to get further and further away. It looked like he might have fishtailed going around that last bend, and the timer actually does not seem to be functioning for this race. We'll have to check the replay to see if it was working at all or if it just was not, and it looks like it was not. So we don't know if that was the fastest time, but in terms of fastest recorded times, we know Flip Gambino is still holding on to it. But Chase family is trying to stay in this competition alongside Flip, but Clyde is not too far back. And as we begin the fourth race, Flip Gambino already has a good lead when it comes to how quickly you can get far ahead at the start of the race. And going around those bends, he gets quicker and quicker, it seems. Chase family is doing everything they can to make this a competition for Flip. But Flip is just making a breeze out of this. And he gets that fourth win, finishing under 15 seconds once more. An absolute beast. But Chase family will be moving on alongside him. And now we get to see what will happen when Flip Gambino goes up against Rebel. They both have a sweep under their belt. Now it's just a matter of what will happen when they go up against each other. They both broke the speed record in the same video, so this could get interesting real quick. And as they start off, Rebel is actually staying in some sort of contention with Flip Gambino. And he does have the inside turn. Will that help? It doesn't seem like it did. But this is a lot closer than some of the other races we've seen so far. Rebel's trying to make something happen here. Here he comes. It looks like he had a chance, but here comes Chase family. These are the kind of races I find very interesting, because sometimes you have an underdog. Sometimes you have an absolute speed demon who gets overtaken. And that almost happened multiple times. And Flip Gambino is now just 3 races away from being undefeated. We've had a couple racers previously who've gotten very close to joining Dusty Miles in the undefeated racer category, but currently, Dusty is the sole member of that title. And now in this race, things are a little bit more spread out. Chase family is actually looking to pass up Rebel here, while Flip Gambino holds on to that lead, and he's got a slightly bigger one this time. And now he's just 2 races away. And a 14.69. I don't remember if that was the fastest time we've seen so far, but if not, it is awfully close. We'll make sure we have the speed record recorded and mentioned for the next video. 2 races left for Flip to try and stay undefeated. But Rebel, Chase family, and Laro are making it a challenge for sure. In fact, look at this. Rebel had the lead for just a moment, but just as quickly as he gained it, he lost it. And now he's side by side with Chase family, with Laro not too far behind him. But look at Flip Gambino go. No one is anywhere near them anymore. But he is bouncing off those walls and knocking himself loose a little bit, finishing at 14.67. You look at this, 2 of his wheels will go airborne a couple times, and that might have stopped him from breaking his own speed record. But now he is only 1 race away from joining Dusty Miles to be the 2nd undefeated racer in this competition. And here he goes, currently has the lead. Rebel Racer is hot on his tail. In fact, all 3 of them seem to be. And if Rebel Racer can control himself well, he might be able to pull off a bit of a shocker here. But Flip Gambino has just been handling those turns really well, and he will be our 2nd undefeated racer, and I believe that will be the official new fastest time with 14.55, just shy of 14 and a half seconds. But what a performance by some of these speed racers, but Rebel is actually knocked out, taken over by Chase family. That was something I didn't see coming. Welcome to day number 8 of our third custom mail-in tournament. Let us meet who will start us off. We have T.O. Sawyer, Philippe Sabines, Uncle Elvis, and Hawk Toi. Yeah, apparently we have a meme racing in this vehicle. Not sure how that's physically possible, but it is happening. And stranger still, it looks like they actually have the lead, and a decent-sized one at that. Going around the turns so far, no competition from anywhere else. They are an absolute bolt of lightning going down that lane, and they actually almost broke 14 seconds in the very first race. For the longest time, Dusty Miles had the speed record, and then both Rebel Racer and Flip Gambino broke that speed record in the last video, and I was wondering if it was going to be possible for someone to break 14 seconds, and now it's looking like an even more distinct possibility. A 14.03, that is about a full second faster than even Dusty Miles was able to do. So Hawk Toi managed to get a victory almost under 14 seconds. Meanwhile, everybody else, like Uncle Elvis, they're looking to at least stay in second. But I am just blown away by somebody being able to break the speed record by that much. And it looks like they might do it again, because they have been clean down this track so far. Not even really touching the walls all that much. And they almost did it again. They finished slightly slower at 14.07 this time. And it looks like we have yet another non-finish here. I love the custom design on that one, though. And look at that, they are getting dangerously close to breaking 14 seconds. I feel like they could do it. While Uncle Elvis and Philippe trade second and third place, and now they are tied for 5 points each. And here we go. Look at this. Hawk Toi just launches themselves out of the starting gate. And they just leave everyone else in the dust in mere moments. Meanwhile, Uncle Elvis and Philippe are likely in second and third respectively. We'll see how that translates as we get to the end. And Hawk Toi finishes in first yet again. But they still are much faster than anyone else has been so far. Even Flip Gambino. And another non-finish in almost the same spot here. Yet people are surely on the edges of their seats trying to see if Hawk Toi can break 14 seconds in the same video they appear in. But yes, T.O. Sawyer has not been able to finish yet. And it seems like non-finishes have gotten a little bit more common as of recent. We'll see if they can at least finish once. Looks like they might have at least been able to get around that first curve, which so far they haven't really been able to do much of. But Hawk Toi has been an absolute missile. Going around the final bend. Oh, wait a minute, they went off the track. It looked like they had perfect execution, but going down that hill, something caused them to pop loose. And they will not be an undefeated racer. That is a shock to the community, to be certain. With someone who's that fast, you would not think they would be a non-finisher, but look at this. Going down the hill, they went from one side of the hill to the other, which caused them to go a little bit airborne and over the wall. But even then, Hawk Toi is still moving on, and it'll be Uncle Elvis joining them. Now let's see who will join them in the finals. between Sneaky Bob, Wild Willie G, Iron Poet, and Crazy Camel. Now I gotta admit, in terms of animals racing in these competitions, I've seen some of them. Like dogs are the most prominent. I don't think I've ever seen a camel. It has been proven that you can teach a llama to drive, but I haven't seen a camel be able to do that before. But for now, we have someone else entirely getting the first place finish, and they also broke 15 seconds. All of a sudden, that has been a lot more prominent in the last day of races or two. And we have yet another non-finisher. In fact, how did they wind up like this? They somehow wound up so that only their back end, I think, is on the track while their front end is suspended in the air, leaning up against a wall or something. We've definitely seen a lot of people wind up on their sides or upside down, but that is not a common way to stop on the track. So let's take a look at the points now. It was Crazy Camel who didn't finish, while Sneaky Bob, another person who has been known for sometimes their speed or sometimes just how well they race in general, gets the first win here. Can they do it again? It's looking very promising for them. They're not moving quite as fast as Hawk Twa was, although that could be a good thing, because we've shown already that if you move too fast, that can ultimately backfire on you. And they actually just barely broke 15 seconds that time around. But a win is a win, as they say. Meanwhile, the Camel managed to finish this time, albeit in 4th. But the fact that they finished at all, that is better than some of the racers we've seen over the course of this competition that did not even finish once. So they can be proud of themselves for that, if nothing else. But now, Sneaky Bob already has 2 wins under his belt, while Willie G is looking to stay in this competition alongside him, but he still has to deal with Iron Poet. They are actually not too far off from each other, but going around that bend, Sneaky Bob suddenly takes off. We've seen in previous competitions that Sneaky Bob can sometimes start off further behind and then pull off a win or at least surpass someone at the last second. But they don't have to worry about doing that here, as they get a 3rd consecutive win, and they are on their way to the finals. Meanwhile, our Camel friend almost finished in 3rd that time, but it looks like Iron Poet was able to get just enough speed to pass them before they got to the finish. And I think it has something to do with when they were going downhill, they clipped something, causing them to spin around and have a decent amount of loss in their momentum. But things are looking pretty good for Sneaky Bob right now, and quite possibly for Wild Willie G. As the 3rd race begins, Iron Poet is staying close to Wild Willie G, but we'll see how he does as they go further down the track, because he usually doesn't end up that close to them by the time they finish. As far as Sneaky Bob is concerned, however, he is about to get a sweep as long as he can stay on the track and stay quick, and he does. So we have a new sweeper in the group. The amount of sweepers we've had has been gradually growing, and Sneaky Bob has just joined them. Meanwhile, who finished in 2nd? Was it Wild Willie G? I believe it was. Yeah, but look how close Iron Poet was to them that time. But Wild Willie G will be moving on, while Iron Poet and the Camel, whose name is specifically Crazy Camel, have fallen short. But now for today's finals. Uncle Elvis and Wild Willie G with Sneaky Bob and Hawk Twa. I am almost entirely certain that Hawk-Twa is not happy that they won't be an undefeated racer. But I am sure as well that they will want to get a sweep here, if nothing else, while also holding on to the fastest time we've seen in this tournament so far. Going into the last straightaway towards the finish line, a pretty clean run, and they almost broke the speed record again. I believe they finished with a 14.03 at one point. So not quite the fastest time we've seen, but dangerously close. But all things considered, Sneaky Bob wasn't that far behind. Wild Willie G, however, was a bit further back, alongside Uncle Elvis. It looks like these stretched out vehicles are the way to go in some of these more recent tournaments. Or at least the ones that are flat and long. Look at this, barely bouncing off the walls at all seemingly. Staying on their wheels even over slight little bumps. And you can't even see anyone else. Hawk-Twa's moving so fast. A clean execution around the bend. And I thought that was a little bit faster, but apparently that was actually about a 1/10 of a second slower. Granted, a 1/10 of a second is not all that much. But sometimes in these races, even 2/100ths of a second can make all the difference. But even if they're not going to be undefeated, Hawk-Twa is just 2 races away from getting a sweep. And they do currently have the speed record. It doesn't look like anyone is going to be breaking it. Especially since they're the only person to have gotten even close to the 14-second mark. But here they go. Look how fast they gain speed even around the first turn or two. And they have just kept everyone far behind them. And that was actually one of their slower times so far, and that's really saying something. But Sneaky Bob looks to be staying in this competition. And it looked like Hawk-Twa actually went airborne for just a moment, and that could have made all the difference. Uncle Elvis and Wild Willie G are definitely in trouble, though. But so far, everyone has finished every time. Can they do that for one more race? Here we go, one race to go. There's just something about the way Hawk-Twa drives that once they get that good start, they just take off like a missile and leave everyone in the dust of their dust. I don't know if that entirely makes sense, but I'm sure it gets the point across. But look at that, they slingshotted themselves around that turn and they went airborne for just a moment. And the fact that they were able to finish slower and still be far ahead of everyone else. They actually almost went sideways there. But Hawk-Twa is someone to keep your eye on. Even if you are sick and tired of that meme by now, that is one dangerous racer. But it will be Sneaky Bob moving on alongside them. Now I believe we still have one more set of races to go, because we have 9 days instead of 8. 9 of the Custom Mail-In Tournament. Let's meet the first group we have for today, and that has Demon Preacher, Flurry Hart, Rob Maverick, and Nomo. Now this is actually quite unusual. Normally we have just 8 days, and then we go on to the Grand Finals, but this is actually gonna give us 2 more racers that will compete, causing the races in the Grand Finals to work a little bit differently, but we will cross that bridge to explain it when we get to it. For now in this group, I believe that is Rob Maverick, who has a large lead over everybody. They are heading towards the finish, albeit not very quickly. But as I sometimes say, a win is a win. 18.79, that is actually one of the much slower times we've seen, especially in recent memory. But we already have a non-finish, and it looks like that is Nomo. Now I believe that might be based on one of the Batmobiles, but I could very well be wrong about that. Flurry Hart managed to grab a second place Demon Preacher in third, and Nomo with a non-finish. Yeah, that vehicle is definitely a bit bulky in some ways, which may help or hinder them, but let's see how consistent they can be. Right now, Rob Maverick has the lead yet again, but this is definitely one of the slower groups we've seen in a long time. Because most groups we've seen finish at least close to 15 or 16 seconds. But Rob Maverick here finished above 18 seconds. In fact, he almost finished above 19 seconds there. And there we have another non-finish, Nomo and Demon Preacher this time. Nomo did get a lot closer to the finish in this race. Now, was he trying to stop Demon Preacher? No, it looked like Demon Preacher was actually trying to spin him around, but ultimately caused him to get blocked by his own move. So things are looking much, much better already for Rob Maverick and Flurry Hart. I'm loving the fluffy, cloud-like design on Flurry Hart. That is quite creative. And now for race number 3, Rob Maverick is in a very familiar position at this point. And it looks like Nomo is the closest one to him at this moment in time. Can he stay on his wheels? Can he finish at the very least? But for now, Rob Maverick is getting that third consecutive win, finishing slightly quicker this time. Nomo is on the edge of finishing, and he could not quite do it. This has got to be messing with Nomo's head. As each race, he gets closer and closer to the finish, but still cannot quite get there. It looked very promising up until the last moment when they collided with the wall, spun around, and lost everything. But Rob Maverick is already progressing. Flurry Hart is looking very promising to join them. Let's see if Nomo can finish this time. They have been getting closer and closer every time. And considering how close they were in that third race, in theory, they should be able to finish this time. Meanwhile, Fluffy Hart actually had the lead for just a moment, but Rob Maverick overtook them, and now actually got their lead to be bigger and bigger as they get closer to the finish. Can they get the sweep? It looks like they will. And they finished at least a little faster that time, and Nomo, as predicted, was at least able to finish this time. If you're not going to progress in the tournament, at least go out on a positive note, and that is exactly what Nomo did. But Rob Maverick and Flurry Hart will be the ones advancing to the finals. And two more from this second group will join them in just a moment, between Numbskull, Rick O'Shea, Alex Cook, and Elber Galarga. Or is it Galarga? I'm not entirely sure. But Numbskull has been a fan favorite and sometimes has a surprising exit or an underdog advance or something. But Numbskull has been rooted on by many of fans. And look how quickly he went around that turn. Is that going to help them? Looks like they might, because they are rocketing towards that finish line. Let's see how fast they were. 14.45. That is a lot closer to the times we've been getting used to. That is not the fastest time we've seen so far. The fastest time at this point is currently held by another racer by the name of Hawktois. Yes, it is a meme that a lot of people are probably sick of by this point, but that doesn't change the fact that they have destroyed the speed record time and time again. And by that, I mean they are the only person to even come relatively close to breaking 14 seconds. Now for race number 2, Numbskull is already taking off. And by the way, to Rick O'Shea, if that was a play on words for the word ricochet, props to you. I am all for wordplay like this. But look how quickly Numbskull's pulling away. They've seen how they finished in previous tournaments, and I'm sure they want to improve, and that's exactly what they're doing. And they are among the fastest racers we've seen in this tournament so far. Albeit not the fastest as of right now. But not too many people have even been able to get under 15 seconds. And Numbskull is among the small amount of people who have. And now they're just one race away from joining the others in the finals. And that man is named Gallagher. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. Anyone who catches that reference, you are my best friends. Anyway now, Numbskull, once again, out in front, no competition from the others, and he just seems to get further and further away from the rest of the competition in all the best ways. Around the turn, down the hill, skids a little bit, quickly corrects themselves, gets another win. And that is one of their slower times, though that might have been just because of how fast they went down that hill. And as Hawk demonstrated, if you're not careful when you're going that fast down that hill, you could easily go over the edge and not finish at all. Which in later races could be your ultimate downfall. But Numbskull and Elber are just one race away from progressing. And Ricochet has actually been getting better with each race. The only place they haven't finished in yet actually has been second and first, but they went from a non-finish to finishing in fourth to finishing in third. So let's see if they can finish in second or better. Although considering how far ahead Numbskull is, that's not going to be easy to do. In fact, it's going to be impossible now, as Numbskull has already finished with an incredible 14.39. So while Ricochet was not able to improve in this race, they still got better for the most part as each race happened. But what an amazing performance by Numbskull. They are not someone to be messed with, but they will be joined by Elber in today's finals, which will begin now. So Numbskull is the one to keep your eye on. Rob Maverick and Flurry Hart, while they are here in the finals, they have been putting up some of the slower times we've seen in a long time, while Numbskull has been putting up some of the faster ones. In fact, look at this. Even just around the first turn, no one else is even in sight. And Numbskull is heading towards that finish already, staying on the ground going down the hill, and they finish with an incredible 14.49. Meanwhile, Rob Maverick in third, Fluffy Hart in fourth. And of course, Elber in second. And Numbskull is a very popular racer in the Races and Fun community, and he is proving here exactly why they deserve to have that honor. Numbskull already has 4 wins under their belt. Could they actually do something Hawk couldn't and join the very small group of undefeated racers? If they can do that, they would be the 3rd one out of all the racers we've had in 9 days of racing. There have been at least 3 or 4 that I can think of that got 1 race short of being undefeated. But that 1 race changed everything. But now Numbskull is only 2 races away from pulling it off himself. If he can do that, then I'm sure he will put a big target on his back, set there by Hawk. Meanwhile, Rob Maverick and Fluffy Hart, they are putting their best foot forward, but their times have been less than stellar, unfortunately. And look at this, just out the gate, Numbskull instantly leaves everyone far behind him. Elber is staying relatively close, all things considered. However, with how fast Numbskull has been, it's pretty much impossible to catch them unless they fly off the track or somehow come to a stop. But that is not the case for Numbskull. And they have been finishing under 15 seconds every time, I believe. For the longest time, it seemed like it would be difficult to do that, but a lot of racers recently have been managing to pull that off. And Numbskull is the latest example. And now Numbskull, despite not having the fastest time ever, he is one race away from doing something that track.This could not. That being an undefeated racer. And considering we have 9 groups, and this is the last one before the grand finals, I'm pretty sure, that means Numbskull would be the 3rd and final racer before the grand finals to be undefeated. Usually, outside of the drag races as of recent, we haven't had too many of these undefeated racers, but now we might have a 3rd on the way. Here comes Numbskull for the finish line, and they will do it! Putting up incredible times throughout, and they will be the 3rd and final racer approaching the grand finals to have not lost a single race yet. An amazing performance by Numbskull. He does have some competition ahead of him, but I'm sure that it'll be fun to watch. Meanwhile, valiant effort by Rob Maverick and Fluffy Heart, but it will be Elber and Numbskull filling up the final spots before the grand finals. Thank you all so much for watching. You can see, ladies and gentlemen, the rules are slightly different because we had a few extra racers in this tournament. But we are finally here at the grand finals. Welcome to day number 10. Let's see which first group of 3 it will be. It contains James Ironbeard, Craigster Sr., and Essa Khan. Now, if you didn't see the rules at the beginning, feel free to go back and pause to read if needed. But all 3 of these racers, while not undefeated, they each got a sweep. In fact, through each day of the competition leading up to here, we had at least one person in each video that managed to get a sweep, if nothing else. And right now, in this group here, it is Essa Khan who has the lead, while James Ironbeard and Craigster Sr. are fighting for second. And I believe it was Craigster Sr. who got second place. Now, unfortunately, because there's only 3 people racing, that means only one of them will move on instead of 2. And so far, it is in Essa Khan's favor. As we begin race number 2, they're staying side by side. Let's see what happens as they go around the first bend where the lanes will split. And it's Craigster Sr. on his own back there, while Essa Khan is currently holding on to the lead, but it is not an easy one to hold on to, as Craigster Sr. is not far behind. The final turn, here we go, but it will be Essa Khan with another victory, and they do finish under 15 seconds. The fastest time currently was 9/10 of a second faster at 14:03, currently held by track.This. But it's looking pretty good for Essa Khan. If they get one more win, they are automatically progressing to the ultimate finals, I believe. And they will be the only one in this group to do so. So far, they're actually in second, but they quickly overtake Craigster Sr. for the lead. But Craigster Sr. is not happy about it. He seems to actually be closing the gap this time around. But not very quickly, and it's not going to be enough as Essa Khan grabs that 3rd win. So Essa will be moving on to the next phase. I believe this next race will just be a victory lap for Essa Khan. But props to Craigster Sr. and James Ironbeard, who got this far. And now for the second group, which contains Giorgio, Arlo, and Sam Hall. All 3 worked very hard to get here, and Sam Hall was the most recent of these 3 to have appeared in the tournament, And they did pretty well for themselves. In fact, they're doing relatively well right now, except Arlo is actually in front of them. Can Sam Hall catch Arlo after going around the final bend? It doesn't look like they will. Arlo is getting close to the finish line. I think he still managed to get the win. But Sam Hall made it very, very close. I think Arlo was trying to go for a nose block, but he did it way too early. But lucky for him, he still managed to get the victory. So far, none of our undefeated racers have appeared yet, and there's only been 3 of them going into the grand finals. And I believe they were Numbskull, Flip Gambino, and Dusty Miles. Even Hawk Twa, who has the fastest time in this tournament so far, was not able to do it because one of their races caused them to fly over the edge of the track. But now Arlo actually has a bigger lead, albeit not much bigger, and they get a second win, one more, and they will be declared the winner. But this is a little bit closer than some of the races we've seen in recent memory. Arlo is just one victory away. Can they do it? I don't know if they'll just do 3 races every time, or just stop at 3 when they're already guaranteed to win. And so far it's looking good for Arlo as they are in front of the others. Sam Hall is looking to close the gap alongside Giorgio. But Arlo is keeping that lead a good distance, and they aren't trying to do anything fancy this time, and they grab that 3rd win, so Arlo is your victor in this group. That being said, some racers have finished about a full second faster than him, so he still has his work cut out for him. But now for our 3rd group. And that 3rd group contains Reinhold Ford, Chase Family, and Numbskull. Chase Family was a surprising progressor in this tournament, as it looked like they may or may not at some point, but they snuck it through. But they are here with Numbskull, one of the faster racers we have in this tournament, and one of the only 3 to have not lost a race yet, and I'm sure Numbskull would like to keep that going as long as possible. And it looks like they will, because they have left the other 2 in the dust, but he does go sideways. Here comes Chase Family. But he wound up bumping into the back of Numbskull instead. So Numbskull will remain undefeated for now. But that was dangerously close. Numbskull and Hawk Twa have sometimes moved so fast that when they go down that hill, they sometimes lose control. And as I've mentioned before, that can be extremely dangerous in some of these last races when you're going up against some of the fastest competition in this tournament that it has to offer. Now Numbskull does have the lead again, but considering how close that last race was, don't count anybody out just yet. Can he stay on the ground? He does. He does hit the wall slightly, but he grabs the win anyway. And Numbskull remains undefeated still. One more race and he will continue to the next phase, keeping that honor. But if there's one thing we know for sure is that Chase Family and Brian Oldford are absolute fighters, as they had to fight tooth and nail to get here. And now they just happen to be going up against Numbskull. It does seem to be a little bit closer up until this point. Numbskull actually popped loose for just a moment. Will Chase Family be able to take advantage of this opportunity? So far they haven't, but Numbskull managed to go a little bit slower going down that hill again. But he does grab the 3rd win, remains undefeated, and he will move on. So 3 spots have filled. And we have at least one more day of Grand Finals before the final phase. Thank you all so much for watching. 11 out of 12 for this custom mail-in tournament. Let's remind everyone who is participating today. We have Sneaky Bob, MDG, and Dusty Miles. Now, Dusty Miles is one of 3 undefeated racers in this tournament at this point, the others being Numbskull and Flip Gambino. So we'll see if they are able to move on and still hold on to that title. We have had other racers get very close, like Hawk Twa, who I will talk about in a moment, that almost was undefeated, but they went so fast at one point they flew off the track. For now, though, Dusty Miles finishes with a 14.88. Currently, the fastest time we have is a 14.03, held by the aforementioned Hawk Twa. Now, it has actually come to my attention that Hawk Twa is actually the car representing Blue Line Racing, who is currently your reigning champion in these tournaments, who has actually won 2 or 3 back-to-back in recent memory. And given how well Hawk Twa has been performing, they are on track to possibly do it again. But they will have some other speed demons like Dusty Miles to contend with, who is currently in the lead yet again, followed closely by Sneaky Bob. MDG is trailing a little bit, so they have some work to do. And Dusty Miles finishes again in first, around the same time as they did in the first race. Now remember, in these semifinals, we only have 3 races in each group of 3 instead of 4. So Dusty Miles is already in a really good position, because the other thing as well is only one of the 3 will move on. So Dusty Miles is in a much better position than the other 2. They will have to pull off a miracle now. But Dusty Miles has not been making it easy. Once he gets that lead, no one has been able to take it from him. But Sneaky Bob is awfully close. So if he can keep good control, stay straight, and stay off the walls, he might have a shot if he's careful. But then he bounces off the walls alongside Dusty. It looked like he was closing the gap, but he just could not do it. So Dusty Miles is the first of the 3 contenders to be moving on today, and he will remain undefeated going into the final round. Now we have 2 more slots to fill. Let's see who will join Dusty. And in the second group we have Sugar Booty Racing, Puff and Flip Gambino. And again, Flip Gambino is another one of the 3 that has remained undefeated. So far, Numbskull and Dusty are the other 2, and they have already stamped their spot in the final round. It is now time to see if Flip Gambino can do the same. And so far, he is making it look easy, as the other 2 have quickly fallen way behind to the point where you can't even see them on the track. And Flip Gambino easily takes the first win, finishing even faster than Dusty Miles did at 14.49. Yeah, the other 2 are relatively close together, but right now, they need to finish in front of Flip in order to have any shot at progressing. And Flip is only 2 races away, so far still undefeated. And look at that, he just seems to get a much better start off of the gate, and sometimes that can make all the difference in these races. And usually right around here is where things get a bit more definitive, and considering how far ahead Flip Gambino is, it's looking pretty good for them. And they get into the straightaway with another first place win with a 14.74 this time. And now there's only 1 race left for this group, and considering Flip Gambino has 10 points, and the closest one to him, which is Sugar Booty, has 6, he needs to win here. And Flip Gambino would need to not finish at all. So there's still technically a possibility, but the odds are very, very small. But seeing how they have less of a shot now, Sugar Booty is putting in a little bit more effort. But as we can see, it looks like it's still going to be a struggle, as Flip Gambino heads for the finish line, gets the win, and he will be the one moving on. And it's almost weird to think that the fastest time is almost a full second faster than that. But that just shows how fast these racers have been getting as they get closer to the final round of the tournament. So far, no one has been able to break 14 seconds, but they've gotten awfully close. But for our final group of today, it is Hawk-Twa, Flamethrower, and Elbert Galarga. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if I am not, but that does remind me, I have received word that I have been mispronouncing Essa Khan's name wrong, and it's actually Issa Khan. So to Issa Khan, I apologize. I will try to remember to pronounce your name correctly in the future. But Hawk-Twa shows why they are the ones holding on to the fastest time, and as I say that, they spin around and lose so much speed. And if Hawk-Twa wasn't already not undefeated, that could have taken away their title just now. Hawk-Twa is one of the fastest racers in this tournament right now. However, that has been shown to work against them every so often, but he is still going to get the win. Flamethrower was off by a hair at the very most. But look at how Hawk-Twa just launches themselves out of the gate. It's almost like the moment the race starts, they already have half a length ahead of the other contenders, and it just keeps growing more and more as they go forward. And they just make those turns look effortless. But here's where they usually struggle, is as they go down the hill. This time, however, that wasn't the case, and they got another incredibly fast time of 14.19. And you can see that he almost got to the finish line before the other two racers even got around that last turn back there. Now Hawk-Twa is one race away from progressing. Remember, they are not undefeated, but they got about as close as you can get without doing so. And here we go again. Hawk-Twa is gradually getting that lead yet again. It's like, I don't think, aside from the one time they flew off the track, no one has ever passed them even once. And that is no small feat to pull off, but they are doing it in spades, staying off the walls for the most part, and they finish with a 14.32. Not the fastest time we've ever seen, but they are the fastest vehicle we've seen today. So a valiant effort and a close call with Flamethrower, but Hawk-Twa is the next contender to be moving on, and now we have our roster for the Ultimate Finals. Thank you all so much for watching. Egregious wait, we have finally made it to the final round. The rules are here to show you exactly how it'll work, and hopefully it'll make it a little less confusing. But we have made it to the top 6 racers, and they will compete today to decide the ultimate winner. And in the first group is Issa Khan, Arlo, and Numbskull. Out of these 3, Numbskull is the one that is still undefeated, and so far they are quickly grabbing that lead. But with how fast these racers have been, especially since they're in the top 6, it's going to get harder and harder to hold on to that title. And since there can be only one ultimate winner, that means only one person can still have the chance to be undefeated. And so far, Numbskull is doing really well, grabbing that first win with a 14.53. The fastest time is Hawk-Twa, representing Blue Line Racing, with a 14.03. Now Numbskull is breathing a sigh of relief, knowing that they can win this. But Issa Khan and Arlo are no pushovers. So as we begin the second race, they are separating a little bit. They go around the turns, and now Numbskull has a more definitive lead, but Issa Khan is not too far back there. So they do not want to get cocky. We've seen what happens to racers, even ones like Hawk-Twa, who do get the lead and then lose it just by flying off the track from going too fast. But that is not the case for Numbskull, who grabs a second win and is now a lot more comfortable. Having 2 wins under their belt, they have a much bigger lead now. But Issa Khan, especially, still has a shot. And here we go. As we start the third race, Numbskull once again has that lead. Arlo is actually not too far behind. In fact, they were neck and neck for just a moment. And now they're more so side by side with Isa. While Numbskull is starting to take off. But look at this, it actually seems a little bit closer this time around. But it is a struggle for the other two to catch up still. And Numbskull is doing well, staying off the walls, keeping straight, and getting 3 consecutive wins. Now, based off the rules, I believe that means Numbskull will be moving on. Let's see. It is Numbskull and Isa will be joining them. For just a moment, I forgot that both the top 2 racers will be moving on and not just the top one. That way we'll have 4 racers in the final. But now here we go. We have Dusty Miles, Flip Gambino, and Hawktois, 3 of the biggest speed demons in this tournament to date. Hawktois currently has the fastest time, but all 3, whether in this tournament or previous ones, have held or shattered other speed records. And it looked like they were all relatively close together, but Hawktois took off, grabbed the first win, almost breaking their own record, but was just shy by 0.07. But look how close the other 2 were. This can still be anybody's game. By the way, if you saw the message at the beginning of the video, there will be a bonus race at the end, and that is because Races and Fun is going to challenge whoever wins this tournament. Now, any race that happens after the official tournament is over will not be counted towards the speed record or who is undefeated or not. But for now, we're back to the race, and Hawktois is approaching the finish line once more, but the other 2 are not far back. I'm not quite sure who grabbed second. Those cars look a little similar from a distance. But I believe that was Flip Gambino who grabbed second place. And that certainly is the case, which also means Dusty Miles is not undefeated anymore. And neither is Flip Gambino. They have both lost that title, so the only person who is still undefeated in this tournament at this point is Numbskull. So here we go. All 3 are almost side by side. Flip Gambino is closing the gap between him and Hawktois. But Hawktois is pulling away once more, heading towards the finish line, bouncing off the walls just a little bit, allowing the others to catch up a bit. But Hawktois still gets that win. I believe it'll be Hawktois and Flip Gambino going into the finals. And that is exactly what happened. Congratulations to Dusty Miles on getting this far, but their time ends here. And now for the third group. This is the final 4. And Numbskull is still undefeated, but he has to go up against Hawktois, who, aside from flying off the track that one time, has not lost another race. But Numbskull did actually have the lead for just a moment, but Flip Gambino and Hawktois take that away from him. So it looks like we will go through the rest of this tournament without an undefeated racer as Hawktois heads towards the finish line and gets the win. While the last undefeated racer, Numbskull, finishes in 3rd. But this is exactly the kind of group you want in a final round. 4 of the fastest racers we've seen in a long time. And Blue Line Racing, who is driving Hawktois, could be winning yet another consecutive tournament, continuing their reign as the champion. And they actually did not start off with the lead, which they usually did in previous rounds. But just because they don't start with the lead does not mean they won't have it later, because they do have the lead now. They did go airborne for just a moment, but they gained their composure back, and they got another victory. Yeah, Hawktois almost had the same problem they did before, but they stayed on the track this time. So now they have 2 wins. Hawktois just needs one more win. They are 1 win away from being the ultimate champion once more. that may have not won every single race aside from the one. But considering how well Blue Line Racing has been doing, if they win yet another tournament, they may come across as an unstoppable force. But Numbskull is not making it easy. They are side by side right now, and he has the inside lane. But he gets flown off the track by Hawktois, who gets the win, and they are your ultimate champion in this tournament. Numbskull put up the biggest fight I've seen in a while, but Hawktois was having none of it. In fact, I actually, looking at the replay, it looks like Hawktois did not make any physical contact, so they ended up having the same issue Hawktois did. And that is not a way you want to go out for sure. But Hawktois is now your winner, so Blue Line Racing continues to dominate these tournaments and continues to be the reigning champion. And now it's just a victory lap for them. Numbskull's trying to redeem themselves and go out on a much higher note than they just did, and they at least finished in second, not too far behind Hawktois. So Hawktois is the reigning champion. They hold on to the fastest time, and now they will go up against Races and Fun themselves to see who can be the winner between the two. So congratulations to Hawktois. But now, they will go up against Races and Fun, and whatever happens here, whether it be if they pull off faster times or not, they will not count. Hawktois is the winner, and they will hold on to that speed record title, even if Races and Fun ends up going faster than them. But here we go. Hawktois currently has the lead, but there goes Races and Fun going around the outside lane and grabbing the lead, and so far it is awfully close. So far no one has proven to be faster than Hawktois, but this could be different. But then Hawktois goes around the final turn, gives himself enough speed to overtake Races and Fun before the final sprint, kind of knocking Races and Fun aside for a moment. And that's all they needed to get the win. So let's see what happens in these next three races. And here we go, race number 2. Hawktois has just about half a length ahead of them. But Races and Fun is showing to be the toughest competitor the Hawktois has had in this entire tournament, and these races don't even count. But look at this, Races and Fun is suddenly taking off, grabbing a decent lead over Hawktois, and they get the win. And they almost break 14.03. I believe this is the first race that Hawktois has lost that didn't involve them making any errors. But here we go, race number 3. They both have one win under their belt, 2 races to go. They are neck and neck currently. Hawktois has a slight lead, but here comes Races and Fun overtaking them, going around the bend, and now their lead is even bigger. I'm not sure what happened in that first race to cause them to finish in second, but here they go, grabbing the win. And now they technically have the fastest time, but that is not going to count towards the official tournament title. But still, no one has been able to break 14 seconds yet, and there's only 2 opportunities left to do so. Actually, just one, actually. This is the last chance either one of them will have to break 14 seconds, and both of them have gotten very, very close. Here we go, once again neck and neck around the first bend. Who has the lead? It is RAF. And now their lead is gradually growing. But here comes Hawktois again. This is about as clean a race as you can get, staying off the walls for the most part. And they get the win. And they do finish under 14 seconds. That is a 13.87. The fastest time we've seen in connection to this tournament. but Hawktois will hold on to the title. So congratulations to both of these racers for showing incredible speed and incredible victories. And this was just all in fun, so I hope you had fun as well. Thank you all so much for watching. See you for the next tournament.